Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-filled discussion for X-Men 97, Season 2.
How can you be so certain your end will bring forth all this life? Because I have faith.
Hello, I'm Jayla, but you can call me Justin. And if you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, gaming, and all things Geekcentric. And today, we're getting into the spoilers for X-Men 97 Season 2. And I could not do this alone. I am joined by my... Because they're not mutants. They're not mutants. Yeah. They might look like mutants, but they're not mutants. Nate Shelton, Darcy Hudson.
I mean, if you mean look like mutants, you mean obviously super hot.
Yeah, like Cyclops,
gorgeous,
Gambits, you know.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
I'll take
your,
that.
Your
Yes.
embodiments of like what sex appeal should look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like
Just don't be calling me
know,
sugar, okay? I don't need
Okay,
any of
sugar.
that.
All right. 2 cups of sugar for you. Well, we're here, guys. We reached the end of Season 2, and very excited to be talking about all of it with you. We were fortunate enough to see the first 4 episodes, which we did a spoiler-free review for, and now we're here. Got the Brotherhood back together, the Brotherhood of Geeks, if you will. There's another one I could have used.
There you go.
But we're going to talk about it, and yeah, we're going into full spoilers on this. So consider this your spoiler warning. It's all out of the way. But let's start with the big picture. Then we'll get into what worked, what didn't work, our favorite moments, and where the finale leaves us heading into Season 3. Sound good to you guys?
Sounds good.
Yeah, yep.
All right. Well, let's start and talk about the entire season. I would love to know for you guys as a whole, how did the season work for you? Your overall thoughts, and I'd love to know your score on a rating of 1 to 5 noble sacrifices. Darcy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed Season 2. I mean, it's continuing everything I loved about Season 1, which is drawing so much from that 90s era storytelling of the X-Men. And this one, it takes it even further, getting some very Grant Morrison-inspired outfits and storylines, stuff like that from the new X-Men and Extinction storylines. So it's really cool. I'm really enjoying it. While it wasn't the most consistent, I feel like because there was an episode removed, there's probably some doctoring around the lead up to that episode that kind of was, I think, noticed in the episodes, and that there was some gaps or some just, it felt like there could be more that we could have explored throughout the storyline, which I think, again, there probably was something that was changed there. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Score wise, I'd probably give this one a solid 4 out of 5 noble sacrifices. I really enjoyed it. And again, it's the 90s of it all keeps me coming back for more.
Okay. Cool. And you were saying that there was an episode removed? I wasn't aware of
so
that.
it's been confirmed by Brad Winderbaum that there was a 10th episode that was planned to feature Onslaught. So what I was talking about and things that were kind of omitted, the Charles of it all, the more the season goes on, he kind of fades off into the background. And I feel like that's because he'd be leaning towards whatever Onslaught's appearance would come from, basically. So they've probably had to tell the story around that or remove him from some scenes because of that. And I think, again, it was noticed. And towards the last half, you rarely see him in anything except for that final episode, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Nate, how about for yourself? What was your overall thought and your score on Season 2 of X-Men 97?
Yeah, we started really strong with this season, right? We got the first 4 episodes. And then as we get into the back half of the season, it kind of felt like we got the first 4 episodes, and Press got the first 4 episodes for a reason. I will say, having never skipped the intro for this after sitting down to my big bowl of cereal, I'm smiling ear to ear every single time I'm jumping into a new episode of X-Men 97. So as far as this season is concerned, I think structurally, it is far weaker compared to the first season. I think there are a lot of elements about the story, to your point, Darcy, something being, taken out, that that have caused it to become a little disjointed. I think the writers did a really, really great job of doing their best to kind of push in the messaging of characters who are mistaking where their true power can come from, right? And you've got like Xavier who pushes himself and causes danger to be born. You've got Valerie and X Factor and how they think they need to gain power in this situation. Cable chasing his destiny over anyone else, like he just is completely on his mission and he gives up so much just for that mission, and that's not the right way to go about it. And of course, Apocalypse realizing that love is truly the answer, and that the love is not a weakness. It is ultimately the best and most powerful thing you can have. And so I think all of that works really, really well as a thematic message, surrounded by a bunch of stuff that is disjointed compared to the first season that felt like we were really going in like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 1, part 2, part 3. So you could definitely tell that changes were made, and it is a bit unfortunate. That said, it's a 4 out of 5 noble sacrifices for me. Like I still had so much fun with this show, and the show is so well made. I think the internet is, we say this every time we talk about discourse when it comes to this stuff, but like the internet is interneting all over this, and I think it's unjustified. And this was still such a really, really good season for me. So yeah, 4 out of 5 noble sacrifices.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from in terms of like the interneting, because they're already jumping on the fact that it shows that they shouldn't have lost Bo DeMaio. Right, and they're in a tricky situation. They had to basically fill in the blanks for probably what was the back half of this season. But I'm with you both. I think for me, season 2 started incredibly strong. Those first 4 episodes set a real bar for the conflict that we were going to kind of see unfold, especially in the way they gave us 2 sides of Apocalypse, that end game level threat that we know as Apocalypse, and then the Ensabanur side, and the person behind Apocalypse. Like, that's 2 sides of the same coin, and that dynamic felt really rich right out of the gate. But as you guys were saying, the second half falls off for me entirely. Once everyone gets back to the 90s, and even Apocalypse says, "I must strike them at their weakest in the 90s." We barely see him. He doesn't show up until the last like 2.5 episodes, if you will. Yeah. And that epic confrontation that the season seemed to be building towards mostly comes through Gambit as his vessel. And that finale ends up just feeling really rushed. Yeah. I'll absolutely give the season credit for bringing everything back to the theme of love, though, and the support system that makes us stronger in understanding that. Like even Apocalypse gives himself to love, and it's definitely his love basically steals a part of him in a way which is so symbolic of what that sacrifice of love is, that Rogue spoke to in the I think it was like the first or the second or third episode when they were by the fire and she was talking to El Sabanur. So I did like that. I think that's a beautiful idea to end on, especially with Nightcrawler kind of making the ultimate sacrifice. There's a lot I liked here, especially in that first half, but as a complete season, it didn't really work for me because like the last season was a 5 out of 5 hands down, but yeah, I'm landing at a 3.5 out of 5 noble sacrifices. So, all right. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I've landed. And like, it's still a good score, right? It's good, but it does come down to some of the issues with kind of keeping things as consistent and strong as the first season was.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think in terms of what's next. And obviously we're going to have a conversation before all that, but I will just say you mentioned rush to the finish. I did feel like if you look at our initial thoughts and my initial thoughts specifically around Apocalypse and just how big of a villain he could be for this show, yeah, I was really hoping we weren't going to get him for the season, end of the season done and wrapped up. And it does feel like to that rush to the finish that it feels like it was just wrapped up a little bit too neatly for me. I would have loved for there to be a little bit more Apocalypse, and even just throughout the season in general, like you said, like more of Apocalypse after episode 4 would have been great for this season and could have justified the idea of wrapping them up in a little gem cube or whatever. But I don't know if there was a disappointing element to the apocalypse of it all for sure.
I think you got to remember or factor in the timey-wiminess of Apocalypse and his interactions with the X-Men, because that scene where he's saying, I must go after them where they're at the weakest, is the beginning of his journey where we see him in the original X-Men cartoon series.
So see, that's what I was thinking too. That's what I was wondering.
It's confirmed that is the first interaction with that iteration of Apocalypse. So every point after that in his timeline, he's messing with the X-Men and not telling them that he met them way at the beginning of
so we did get more. It's just already aired and I haven't
exactly that's the only issue. So I think that's where they're trying to go for, was the route that like everything that we've seen him do in the past was the future for him at that point.
I don't know if that really landed well enough, but yes.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think to your point, Nate, I don't think that really landed, especially for me and someone who has watched all those episodes. And
sure,
you know, like those episodes also wrapped up very quickly. Like I think there was a 2-part episode with Apocalypse, you know, start and end. He was always like sort of a background threat, you know, with Cable always around and stuff like that. There was one episode where it was like start and end with Apocalypse. So like he was always a looming threat that would come back in some shape or form, always as Apocalypse. So to contain him into a gem of some kind does feel like there is a reason for him to come back at some point, or to be unlocked, if you will. Yeah. But that said, you know, I think it was just the idea of the setup and the finish with this character didn't match. No. The setup felt really strong, and this back half where he, I think, could have had more involvement, could have really like messed around with the X-Men and you know, kind of done some things to kind of impact them. We didn't get any of that, unfortunately. And it's the same sentiment that you had about Charles Xavier, how he kind of drifted. We saw these moments of like very introspective moments with Charles where things are unraveling, but yet we don't really go anywhere with it. So I don't know if it's always the best decision to just remove an episode. We've seen this, I guess, from past iterations of animated shows where it's like, what if season 1 lost an episode out of there? It was like, and then Gamora just shows up in the finale, and it was like, how did we get here? It would have been nice. And then it's like, oh, we're going to put that in season 2. And, you know, again, that's more of an anthology series, obviously, that kind of intertwines in some aspects. But that said, I think, you know, kind of deconstructing the season that way does feel a little damaging to the final product, right? As we've kind of discussed here.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, in terms of, like, even that ending, me having not watched all of the Apocalypse stuff necessarily prior to it, I just don't know if that would be satisfying enough for people. You know what I mean? As like an epic final ending. You know what I mean, though? Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I got to think that, again, if they did cut that final episode and it was revolving around Onslaught, you think Apocalypse would have a hand in that, having killed Magneto, maybe taunting Xavier over the course of the season, leading to the creation or birth of Onslaught would have been a very satisfying thing to see. Like, a big bait and switch, basically, where it's Apocalypse is the big threat, and then the 9th episode, no, Onslaught's the true threat, and that's where the 10th episode would end off. But again, I don't know if that was the original case or what, but it definitely feels like something was left out or left on the floor with Charles Xavier, because we felt it very strongly at the beginning. He was remorseful about the death of Magneto, and then he just kind of fades into the background, and it's weird.
yeah, it is. Well, we've kind of talked about, obviously, the overall season itself, but I'd love to kind of get into some of the specifics. So, you know, in that, I know you guys were talking about what worked, but if you were really to hone in on what stood out to you as working really, really well with this season, what are those elements? Nate, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I think in terms of like throughout the season, again, I think there are the elements that it's weird because I said it was disjointed, but I also did enjoy the side tangents that we were going on. I think the idea, though, it's like somehow it's like if we had 10 episodes, maybe those side tangents could have been a little more acceptable, if that makes sense. But like, dude, I loved the you know, getting to see these characters shine and do their own thing. I think Jubilee was really a highlight this season, and even in this finale, getting to sort of see them all sort of get their own shining moments. For as brief as it felt and as quick as that finale felt, we still got moments of, like, even as, you know, I brought up Jubilee, like her, like with what's his name, Summers, brother Summers.
Havoc.
Havoc, thank you. With him being like, "Oh, got your driver's license or permit or whatever, your learner's permit for flying the jet." I think they all had some really cool moments in there, and yeah, man, I think the ideas in which where they were taking the moments in which they were taking all of those references from the comic books. I think the Thing episode with Wolverine and getting to see so much of Alpha Flight and Puck, and even just like the little jokes of like, Morph transforming into the Thing in an episode that feels like the Thing of people getting infected and all of that stuff. Just, those were things that just made me smile and made me excited and giddy and happy and made me want to explore other parts of X-Men. Made me want to look into like, okay, what reference is that I'm not familiar with? And I think that's one of the best things that an IP can do, that a series can do, that this show can do, is to get you to want to kind of explore more. So I think this season still really had that in droves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I have to wholeheartedly agree with you there. Again, the drawing from the comics, the fact that we're getting a full X Factor team, seeing X Force and different iterations and different members, even through the Weapon X episode we got there. Just so much is being pulled from the comics, or a time of the comics where there was so many X-Men, to the point where they split up into new teams and created X Factor, your X Force, and all these concurrent stories going on with team members that started off in the X-Men, then went off to do their own thing. And we're getting that through this series is really cool. And I love that. And again, the fact that we got the Brood, I just can't wait to see how they come back, because that is not the end for the Brood. They are a constant thorn in X-Men sides, because they are like the best host to breed in. So again, I'm just so excited for what other references could come from the 90s, because that's some of the most wild and out there X-Men storytelling. And it's just, this is the perfect medium to explore those stories.
And those intro credits slapped as well.
Oh yeah, every time I'm watching, just seeing what references we're getting.
You never skip, because they're always going to have some sort of cool reference. It's always tailored to the episode, and you want
and that episode, right? Was it 2 that they did
with the X-Force episode? Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, which was great. Yeah.
So
but like I was saying, in my overall thoughts, like the first half really worked for me. It set up the ramifications of the X-Men being scattered across different timelines. It made it really interesting how their presence affects Apocalypse, and how all of that might affect their own timeline, which it never did. But I don't think the back half fully pays it off, obviously, like I was saying, but like I really liked those early episodes and what they were setting up in terms of how focused they were from a writing standpoint. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I think the season is also at its strongest when it can do more contained adventures, like these bottleneck episodes, right? Like I love the X-Force episode. I love the one where Wolverine's journeying to like get his adamantium back, and he becomes consumed by, what were they called again, those aliens?
It's the Brood. It's Marvel's version of Xenomorphs,
the
basically,
Brood
from Alien.
Yeah, which is what I thought. Like I had a toy of that, and I thought that was what I thought it was from Alien, but I now realize
that was just
after
Marvel from the era of being
show,
like, that's cool, I want it in my comics. Change the name and the color, and we're good to go.
So cool.
Yeah. It was cool. It was cool to see like a lot of people online. Obviously, I haven't read the comic, but like, they pulled the reference from the cover and showed the still from the episode to see that there's like this through line for a reference. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think those episodes let the show slow down in the right ways and like focus on the characters and just being a simply great X-Men adventure. So I think it's those episodes are very integral to an overarching story. And I like that there was a mix of that. But like I was saying before, like I think the overarching theme of love, the thing that binds these characters together, that did work for me. We see that conversation with Rogue and Sabanur, and it just comes back around in those final moments as Nightcrawler sacrifices his life for her. And I just love the idea that despite all of their powers, the thing that makes them stronger is their willingness to look out for one another and be there for one another, right? So it really just bringing in this theme of family. So I think they did stuck to landing on the idea of tying in the family and love of it all.
Yeah.
That worked for me as well. I just think how we got there was very sloppy.
Well, and I think you bring up family. I do agree. I think the idea of like Rogue and Kurt and who we'll talk about at some point, like it's just all of those elements that, yes, they're finding ways to carry through like a a narrative thread, but it still felt like it didn't have like a consistency, if that makes sense.
Well, how we got there was just messy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think the idea too is that, like, Nightcrawler and Rogue are the children of Mystique, right? And they are siblings to a degree. They're half siblings, if you will, right? And so this idea
and
Graydon Creed is also part of the messed up family. Sabretooth is his father, so him and Mystique bedoinked, which is pretty wild. Makes you wonder who she like assumed to be for that to happen. Anyways, I hope it was that's Logan. A whole other thing. Yeah, I would hope it's Logan too. But no, like I think what's interesting about it is that like he is family, and Kurt is family to Rogue, and what he decides to do is sacrifice himself for the greater family, the family that has been there to really help build Rogue to who she is. Like, he knows he's been there for her, but he doesn't want to lose her to the sacrifice, so he's willing to do that because life will go on. You know what I mean? And it'll still be great for her. So he sees that opportunity. So it's a really interesting sort of parallel juxtaposition, I don't know what you would call it, but just the fact that he is family sacrificing himself so that she could be with her found family. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's just, it's a really, really interesting thing. So yeah, I think it all worked really, really well. But with that, there's things that didn't work for sure. So Darcy, was there anything for you that stood out as something that didn't work?
Again, I think I've talked about the thing that didn't work about me the most, and that was just the whole petering off of Charles Xavier's storyline. That feels like something was left on the table that we didn't get to see, and it is noticed throughout the rest, or again, the back half of this season. So I think that's the biggest thing and biggest gripe is how much that seemed to have impacted the overall consistency of the storytelling throughout the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, again, for me, it's the apocalypse of it all. I also think too, like, outside of that one episode that was cool, like, again, getting to see Xavier struggling with the loss of Magneto, and him consistently trying to relive that moment almost as a way to like sort of punish himself, if you will. And that results in danger, and the lesson that's learned from that is good. But I also think like Eric is a huge part, and to your point, Darcy, of like, less Charles means less opportunity to reckon with that situation even a little further. And it feels like, again, I just think that whole element of the idea of the rush to the finish, I think of, like, oddly enough, the ending of Super Mario Galaxy movie, right? Where it's like we complete the story and then it's just a scene with no dialogue of like Peach's castle, and then it's just we fly off and that's it. And don't get me wrong, beautiful speech. I thought it was performed incredibly for those final moments. But I would have loved even just a little bit of a dialogue between Rogue and maybe even Gambit, or just something, just a little bit more in that area of like the post story stuff to really, really kind of give you an emphasis on, like, again, it's exciting to think about what's next and to get the little scene that we're going to probably, chat about. But I just think that the ways in which they wrapped up just the entirety of the season, I don't know. It just didn't fully work, and I think it could have been given a little bit more. But
yeah, 100%. That's how I feel. Yeah. I honestly feel like it just, like, again, like I was saying, the back half loses focus. It feels like an entirely different show, actually. In all honesty, the back half of the season in comparison to the first 4 episodes, because it just feels like we were sort of not dealing with what those first 4 episodes set up. Like, it just felt like an entire other season of television, other season of X-Men 97, if you will, with little bits of threads that kind of weave their way through. But yeah, it just feels like we spent all this time establishing Apocalypse as a massive threat, and kind of spending a little time exploring En Sabah Nur on the other side, and only for Apocalypse's presence to be diminished once the story returns to the 90s, right? Like, it just feels really weird. We the whole tease of Gambit was interesting. We were waiting for it, but he doesn't come back until episode 6, at the end of episode 6.
Yeah.
Because it would have been great if they showed back up and he was there and he's fucking with them. Like, their timeline's different. They don't understand why. We all understand why and what's going on. And, there's this threat that they can't necessarily trust. behind it all. But him coming in when he did, I don't know. Again, it all, like you were saying, it just feels like it's rushed. But with everything surrounding, I guess Beau DeMaio's departure, I just wonder how much involvement he had in shaping the back half. Like a lot of, like I was saying, the internet has already gone ham on the fact that, like, oh well, this is a sign that he can't, he should have stayed writing for the season and so on and so forth. And it's like, listen, like, this team was probably left in a sort of rough place to kind of figure out how to pick up after that, right? Like, yeah, exactly. Well, I think for sure, but I think they've probably, at least I would hope that they've mapped out what those next years are, based on not leaving themselves in a situation maybe like this, where it does feel inconsistent. So they're like, okay, let's plan out the rest of this and get to the story that we were going to tell with him, just in our own way of how we can do it. Because it's all there, right? It's it can definitely work, but that might explain some of the consistency. I'll give people that. Like, I think it does explain the consistency, but I don't think it's any proof that, like, Beau DeMaio needs to be doing X-Men. I think, again, it's just finding a better balance between where we're starting and where we're ending, and what's the through line for it. And it felt like Apocalypse was meant to be this through line through this entire season, and dwindles a little bit. And yeah, as you guys pointed out, the use of Charles Xavier, feeling like, he was unraveling, and then we don't really get to see that. And now we're going to have to wait until probably next season to see that happen, because I think that's where we're going to get him negotiating his feelings over the fact of the loss of Eric, of Magneto, right? Because, like, Onslaught is the amalgamation of them. And Darcy and I were chatting, I think, just about the idea that, like, this origin can be very different, right? The fact that, like, they shared a mind, and he helped him in season one, kind of get back to where he needed to be, left an impression on his brain that, or almost like an imprint of Eric in his mind that then evolves into Onslaught. And I thought that was, like, really, really cool if they decided to do that angle. Of course, that's us writing our dream idea of how it all connects. But
I feel like they've kind of shot that down already in the show with Xavier talking to Polaris about it and saying, I can't find any trace of him in my mind. He's not there at all. So it's almost like they were laying the ground for that to be the case, and then had to backtrack. I don't know. Again, I think it would have been really cool with not so much Apocalypse being the through line for this season, but death and dealing with the consequences of death throughout this season would have been the through line. But again, removing the onslaught of it all would have been, I think, is where it suffers, and it's noticeable. Yeah, obviously.
I think it speaks to, like, the writing power that I think Emi Yonemura and Matthew Chauncey have to be able to kind of continue again those breadcrumbs of the theme. It would be great to see what they can do when it's just them and their full power. My buddy of mine, shout out to Dan, who I was talking about this season off air. He said that he felt as though every time he was watching it week to week, but every time he would tune in, he felt like it was like 3 episodes ahead. And that's how disjointed it felt to him. And I'm hearing, this conversation and having that conversation with him. I kind of get it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels very reminiscent of the early, the first iteration of the show back in the 90s, where it was very much every episode was a different adventure that was disjointed from the last one. And we got that a lot this time too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're going to have to, obviously, like, for them, it's not easy to have lost someone that was probably such a creative powerhouse in this whole experience of, like, building this. And they very much probably recognize that, but they have to deal with the hand that they're given, right? Very Gambit reference, if you will. But it is something that I think shows in this season, that they were going through a bit of a transition in terms of creative vision and stuff like that. But I have all the faith in them. They did such a great job with season 1, and again, like, season 2 is not horrible. It's just not the highs. It doesn't match the highs of season 1 in the best ways, right? So yeah. But yeah, there are some fantastic moments that happen in this season. I'd love to know if you guys had any, favorite moments before we get into talking about Mystique and the reveal and all that stuff. But Darcy, do you have any outstanding favorite moments that stood out to you?
Really, it's just seeing characters again. Omega Red in that Brood episode was awesome.
So cool.
Strong Guy, anytime Strong Guy's on screen, I'm happy. He's got the same powers as Bishop, but for some reason they made him really big, and I just love that about
small
him.
legs, yeah.
And the reason why he got his name Strong Guy, he was just going out to his first appearance as a hero and joining X Factor, and hear someone in the crowd say, "Oh, they got a big guy. I bet you he's the strong guy on the team." So he's like, "Yeah, I'm Strong Guy." Just love that aspect of the character. So seeing him is fun. The Danger Room episode is probably one of my favorites. I love that episode because it's one of my favorite storylines from the comics. Is the whole Danger gaining sentience is such a cool concept to me, and just how it comes about. The fact that we kind of skip over that, but we still get such a cool story from it, I think was really cool. Yeah, that whole episode is my favorite.
That was handled pretty well, actually. I will give them that. I know that there was a more, not extensive, but a longer arc with that character in the comics, but the way they treated it as sort of like an adventure of the episode sort of thing, the villain of the episode, I liked it. I think they handled it well, and it was pretty badass too.
Yeah.
Neat. How about for yourself?
Yeah, I think outside of the episode that I mentioned with the Wolverine, kind of getting his claws back, if you will. I did also really enjoy Strangeland Savage Heart episode 7. I thought, it was as
Bishop
far as
and
side stories go. Yeah, Bishop and Polaris, they're gonna bang for sure.
Well, I mean, they're having picnics at the end of this,
bro, they're gonna do something.
While kids frolic behind them, come on.
Yeah, well,
it's basically
they're
giving
learning
them
about DNA and genetics.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, they'll be doing the same when they bedoink, so it's fine.
But them flying in on the big pterodactyl thing, right, was so sick and just so 90s, and it's those moments that make me go, yeah, I'll give you a 4, because it's just you get so giddy seeing this stuff come to life on screen, something that back in the 90s would just be expected. And it's weird it's funny how today, in today's day and age, it's a treat. And so it's more of this, please. I just think it was really, really well done. I'm saying it now. If we're casting live action X-Men characters, I didn't know who Exodus was before this episode. And I'm like, dude, get me Lee Pace as Exodus.
Yeah, that'd be great,
buddy. Would be so sick.
He's rumored to be Magneto in the upcoming live action.
Okay,
people. Yeah.
That's crazy. We'll
From
see.
Ronan to Magneto, that's a big jump.
But I think it's just the idea of that episode was a really good exploration of what X-Men does best, which is the concepts of pitting humanity and X-Men and mutant kind against each other, with the X-Men being the voice of reason, and Kurt specifically being the voice of reason in that moment with Graydon. So yeah, really.
And we get Colossus back. So
come on,
and the way the way he's able to work, the way he's able to talk to Colossus too, right? Nightcrawler, it really does show his strength. That was his episode for sure, and which makes all the sense as to why he sacrifices himself in the end. Yeah, but you were talking about the bottleneck episodes. I think going off of what you were saying there, where it's just it's these reminders of these 90 nostalgia. That's what those episodes were back then. They were just a villain or adventure of the week. Sometimes they would be to be continued, and there would be a part 2, but or maybe a 4-part. I think there was a 4-part a while back. But the idea that they would do these self-contained episodes that were just adventures, if you will, with the X-Men and a foe, that episode, like you just described, it feels very reminiscent of what those old episodes were, or an X-Force episode being, involved in some way, right? All of it was very reminiscent of that style. So having an overarching story mixed in with that feels refreshingly different from some of the aspects of what we had from the 90s, with sort of those modern touches. And I think, again, season 1 did it better than season 2.
Yes.
But
season 1 did a better job of fun with structure. And that's not to say that season 2 doesn't have just as much
fun.
It definitely
does. As much structure.
A little less structure.
A little structure. Yeah, a little down here, right? And then the fun's up here, but
fun's up here. A little down here.
We're usually sitting like there. Yeah. Okay.
With waving her hands, no one can see you, man.
Yeah, I think like some standout moments for me were seeing Kang the Conqueror, Rama-Tut, and involved in this universe. I think what
does that mean?
What does it mean? I just think what it means is that this show knows how to lift from Marvel comics and Marvel stories to just pull in elements. Like we had a celestial being who is in fact, Darcy, you can verify, he is in fact part of Apocalypse's origin.
Yep.
Or no?
Oh yeah,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Eson,
yeah. Rama-Tut's the one ruler of the time when Apocalypse or Ensabanur is born and is being enslaved and all that stuff, and then gets the celestial seed planted in him. Yeah, it's all this stuff is true to Apocalypse's backstory, which is why it's so cool how they managed to pull it and make it work.
And I totally thought that Eson was voiced by Hamish Linklater, but he's not. But it sounds a lot like we just heard a lot of Hamish Linklater in the last little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I just loved how they were able to pull those elements in. Right. And they're not afraid to, right? Like even having a character like Morph, and I think we talked about this last season, like he can be anyone in
he was Flatman at one point. Like,
dude, yeah, I know. It was really
Avengers.
random, right?
Yeah.
Like it was so random. He was the Thing. He was part of Alpha Flight. Many of the different characters from there. Like he is so like every time you see him as someone, you're like, I always forget too, because like there was a scene I think in episode 1 when Thor just comes in and smashes. I'm like, what the hell is Thor doing? Oh, Morph, right, it's Morph. Like, what the hell is Thor doing here? So I really loved those moments. Magneto's death was incredible, right? Like it didn't hit the highs obviously of Gambit's death, but it meant a lot in the sense of like who the character is, and knowing that Gambit was probably around the corner to be resurrected. It's like, are we going to resurrect Eric? And maybe there's that. But Darcy, you were saying too, like this is the era of comic storytelling where characters can die and come back pretty easily.
It's the reason why we have Madeline Pryor and a clone of Jean Grey, and then the Spider-Man comics, why there's so many of him. Like it's the time where no one can stay dead because that ends a story, and bringing them back makes for a better story apparently. So
yeah. And just the last thing here is like, I haven't read all of the comics. I've read some comics through my cousin who was a big X-Men reader, and we read a lot of the older stuff. But the fact that, like you were saying, Darcy, that they can completely just dig into that well of comic book storytelling so naturally for them, again, seeing Logan transformed as one of those broods, you know what I mean?
From Brood hybrid was sick. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool. And like, just knowing that image was pulled from a comic cover, that's really cool. The fact that a sentient a celestial was a part of Apocalypse's origin story. Again, just all these things involving Kang in some capacity. Adding in X-Force. It was cool. It was really cool to see them just kind of pull in all of this stuff from these comics and find a way to fit them into the show.
And that final fight, I will say again, is for as quick as it sort of, went the whole episode went by. I will say Celestial Rogue, oh my stars and garters was so cool. Her pulling off the glove and it just disappears into nothing was so sick. Because again, it's like that's such a classic Rogue move, but obviously elevated. And yeah, I did think the whole like Gambocalypse, I guess is what people are calling him, was really cool.
Yeah. It's a really neat way of doing an Apocalypse storyline, because in this comics, I'm pretty sure he did take over Cyclops at one point, but it didn't look anything like this. This is a very 90s, and it fit the era and the look and everything, and it was believable with what led it up to it, at least, with the Death Gambit that we had, which was also really sick.
Yeah, so he never took over Gambit in the comics.
No, not in the comics. In the comics, I'm pretty sure he's only done Cyclops, and again, it was it was not as nice to look at, to say the least.
For sure. Yeah, they made him look very pretty, so you could still recognize Gambit was in there. But yeah, those were the things that were like my favorite moments and favorite parts of what they did in this season. Okay, let's talk about this end stinger. I think that brings us pretty much to our biggest question of the finale, and that is, where the hell do we go from here in season 3? now this scene, the after the credits rolled, we did get a scene that revealed Val Cooper, or who we suspected is, or Val Cooper as Mystique. So Mystique was disguised as her in this moment. What do we think though? Because I know last season, just to talk this through with you guys, because I know last season a lot of people suspected Val was Mystique, and that was never revealed. And I thought this was like, oh my God, it has been Mystique this entire time.
No.
But
No,
then we
this
get
is a
her,
recent thing.
Because
Yes.
Beast is reading the newspaper. It says Graydon on it on the front of the
Creed,
newspaper
yeah,
in
it
that
says
moment.
Creed, yeah.
Or Creed or whatever.
Yeah.
To me,
But it's, yeah.
to me, it's more the fact that Mystique is a super spy in the way that she can take over these identities, but she's not dumb enough to let the identity she's assuming just walk freely around. So the fact that Val walks into the office at the end there means that Val has had this office, been coming and going freely. Like, yeah.
So what I gathered from it was obviously, we see Val sitting there. She opens up the folder. We see Mystique's picture. We see her brotherhood, if you will, that she was a part of, all of the different characters that are there. And then we get the reveal as the real Val walks in, actually the Val that we were watching is Mystique, and she shoots her. To me, she was there obviously to get information, right? Because Val had information, so she snuck in as Val to get those details. So
I
clearly,
think her plan was to take Val's place, though, entirely with the fact that she was
It's a
so quick to
Senator
draw the
Kelly
gun.
situation all over
Yeah.
again, right?
Yeah, again,
yeah.
it's something we've seen Mystique do before. That was entirely her plan, was to take the position. She was just doing some light reading while she waited for Val to show up.
Because
okay.
what's a better way to create dissension between X-Men and humans to kind of push the mutant side of things more than maybe becoming this specific figurehead that's obviously able to impact that.
I think that what we're seeing here is the next season will be leading towards a human mutant war in some way, with the Friends of Humanity now going to be kitted out by government, subsidiaries or military equipment, stuff like that, and the their bigotness, and with Graydon Creed being a president and trying to drive down the anti-mutant like sentiments and stuff like that. We're going to see the X-Men have to fight against that, and maybe even flee to Genosha to get away from it all, because they can't keep teaching in New York anymore. Like, I think we're leading towards a very much a human versus X-Men war.
Yeah. I think going back to sort of the grassroots of what the show was kind of dealing with before, humans and mutants, like, understanding that dichotomy and that the difference between those two lifestyles, if you will, right?
And I think we'll see, a change in Mystique. I think with everything going on in terms of like the loss of her son, specifically, I think that's going to definitely have an impact. But I also think in terms of like X Factor, and Darcy, you mentioned the Friends of Humanity being kitted out by the government. Yeah, they're probably going to have to, because I do think X Factor is going to completely switch sides. And I think we even get a little bit of that with Alex Summers this season, even just again with how like sort of jokey he was being with Jubilee that I brought up earlier. I think there could be a switcheroo. I think he definitely is not, just like how Polaris was like, I've always been an X-Men.
I think one of the coolest things is that this time Havoc and Cyclops in this universe don't know they're brothers.
Oh,
so that's one of the coolest things about that relationship, is that when they do find that out, that might be the turning point for Havoc to switch sides. Also, we don't really know what Mystique's whole game is in this whole thing. Like, maybe she's stepping into the control X Factor to remove them from the government, to take them out of the government's hands and make them less the lapdogs. Like, maybe she's in it for the right reason. We don't know. She's always kind of had this gray moral thing, which she's just in it to try and survive, and that she'll take any side that she can.
I think, to the point of what Darcy's saying, she's there to try to diminish the human interference into mutant life, right? Like, I think she's going to use her team of Brotherhood, because I know that the clip or material that was shown at Comic-Con that might be shown at D23 for season 3 featured all those characters that were featured in her little folder. So we saw Pyro, we saw Toad, we saw the Blob, we saw all these different
Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Mastermind.
Yeah, they were there, but we didn't see them in that clip. I didn't see them in the clip, but they were. They're all probably, again, to your point of what you're saying, though, they're all people that she's going to go to kind of help build up something new. And, you know, that was the whole point of when she took over the role of Senator Kelly in the movies, was to try to like impact and slow down this like push of human of mutant initiatives to kind of detain and control. She played the long game is essentially what she was doing in that situation. I think she's going to do it again here. And you brought up her sort of the affection she has for her children. I don't know if she has much.
Not really. I mean, Rogue is really the only one she showed affection for, and Rogue isn't even her blood child. She's just someone she adopted.
Yeah, she didn't.
I saw somewhere that she like reconnected with Kurt at some point.
She did eventually, but I don't know if it ever happened in this timeline. Like that's a comic storyline for sure, because she does have that hero's turn in for a while where she leads her own comics. But in this universe, I think she is still very much that distant, neglectful mother.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are going to see a hero turned version, I believe, of Mystique in Avengers Doomsday. So, you know, it's going to seem like
again, she's fighting for survival. So
exactly,
the surviving side is who she's fighting with, and that's going to be
exactly
the guys.
exactly. So, you know, I think it's going to be interesting to see how she's going to fit into season 3. I do really want to see them get to Onslaught. I always had wished that when I was watching the original animated series back in the 90s, when I had reached that point in the comics with like, you know, understanding who that character was, and just like such a missed opportunity to not see that and to bring that to life. And I feel like it's definitely possible in this show, and I would love to see that kind of come up in season 3. I really hope so.
I'm wondering if we're going to get what you guys want, which is a bit more of a elongated story, because it seems like they're producing, like they're entering the final stage of animation for season 3, and they've already started on season 4. So like they're being developed or produced very close together. So hopefully that means the story will be a nice consistent through point over 2 seasons, which would be neat.
I think so. I think again, the thing that we talked about so much in season 1 is that how much the show just felt like it grew up with its audience, right? It wasn't just the kids show anymore. It was now thoughtful. It was connected. There was a bit of a pace to it, right? It wasn't about just concluding everything in one episode. There was a through point that carried through, and then there was some adventures, like fun stuff that happened as well. Like there was just a nice balance of really great storytelling with all the nostalgia of the original. And I hope season 3 can get back to that in the best ways. Well, that is it for our spoiler-filled discussion for X-Men 97 Season 2. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, and you want to write into us and let us know your thoughts on this episode or on X-Men 97 Season 2, did you like it? Are we wrong? Are we like so wrong that you need to like reach out to us through email? Well, you can do so by reaching out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or you can yell at us on Twitter, like so many people do. Actually, no one yells at us. Feel free to. You can reach us you can find us there at Geekcentric YT. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at We Are Geekcentric. Keep in mind, we have a ton of great episodes out right now for you to enjoy, such as if you like spoilers, well, we got some spoiler content for you. We have our most recent episode, which is a spoiler-filled discussion for the House of Dragon Season 3. We have our spoiler-free review as well for Star Wars Visions Presents The Ninth Jedi. We also have a spoiler discussion for Spider-Man Brand New Day. You know, maybe you've seen that movie and you want to hear us gab on about it. Well, there's an episode for you. But maybe you haven't been one of the people who have spent your money, the billions of dollars that this movie has made. I don't know if there's anyone out there that hasn't seen this movie.
I think everyone's seen it.
I think the whole world has probably seen it. So there's no point in plugging the spoiler free, but we do have a spoiler free episode. We do have a spoiler free review for Batman Cape Crusader Season 2.
Hamish Linklater.
Yeah, that's the Hamish of it all. You all those episodes of Batman Cape Crusader are available on Prime right now for you to watch. So you can either listen to our episode and then watch the show, or vice versa. Doesn't matter, no harm. And also on that, we do have an interview coming soon from Batman Cape Crusader Season 2. And we have a whole bunch of other interviews. And that interview plus all of our other ones are going to be on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/geekcentric. You can find them on podcast feeds as well. But we got more stuff coming, more interviews, fan expos around the corner, tips around the corner. So there's there's a lot going
Well, I'm sure
on.
we'll be talking some D23 too. I mean,
Oh, of course, dude. We got D23 coming up, dude. We're going to be chatting it up for sure on a This Week in Geek episode coming soon. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, we would really love it. If you love what we're doing, you've stuck around this long, give us a 5-star review. We would love that. It goes a long way. It helps spread Geekcentric love through the podcast feeds because we are Geekcentric and you can be too. Nate, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this spoiler-filled discussion. And as we say,
love ya.
Laters.
Peace.